Farmers should increase cultivation of indigenous crops to meet growing demand. USAID-funded Kenya Crops and Dairy Market Systems Deputy Chief of Party Judy Odongo says consumption of indigenous food is gaining popularity in urban centers as the more people become more health conscious. While Raymond Jenga had a sit-down with Odongo on the sidelines of the two-day National Dialogue Food Systems, and this is how the conversation went.
Well, thank you for joining us. And even as the country grapples with food insecurity, the country also boasts of a diversity of indigenous food varieties. That is our discussion tonight with Judy Odongo, who is the Deputy Chief of Party for USAID at Kenya Crops and Dairy Market System. She will introduce herself further, and we'll be discussing also the national dialogue that is ongoing here in the country on agri-food systems. Thank you for coming to this program.
My name is Judy Odongo, and a very good evening to all the viewers. We have been around for 6 years now, implementing an activity that is towards increasing agriculture-led economic growth and increasing market systems and household resilience, and also focusing on improving nutrition outcomes at household level. Our focus has been in 12 counties in Kenya, 3 in the southeast, and 5 in Nyanza, and the 4 western counties. And up until now, we have reached 300,000 of our households with agriculture technologies that are enabling them to improve productivity and increase incomes at household levels. We have also layered those extension information to enable them improve productivity with nutrition-sensitive agriculture messaging.
Oh, great. This seems like you've been doing a lot as an organization. But I want us to talk about these indigenous crops. I'd like you to explain to us in a layman's language what indigenous crops are.
Nitasema hii ni chakula ambayo babu zetu na nyanya zetu walikuwa wakitengeneza wakikula. Hatukukuwa na GMO, hatukukuwa na a lot of chemicals, tulikuwa na mboga zetu za kienyeji, managu, terere, saga, tulikuwa na kuku zetu za kienyeji, tulikuwa tunatengeneza nyama, tukikausha na chumvi tu, na so tunazungumza kuhusu kurudi pale. Tukila mapera, tukila mzambarau and things like those. So we're just, promoting mihogo, chakula ambazo ziko na fiber, ambazo zinatusaidia miili yetu kuweza kukua na afya nzuri.
I'd like you to explain to us, in light of climate change. I know we have just concluded the Climate Summit Week, and now we're talking about ensuring that we grow these indigenous crops across the country. What is it, the role of these crops in achieving our country's sovereignty?
We pride ourselves, and Kenyans and Africans, in the African leafy vegetables. That is one of the most important aspects of our diet. Those are crops that are really easy to grow with very little water. And so part of what the KCDMS project has been promoting is farmers having small kitchen gardens back at home, even in places where there is very little water, and methods of recycling water so that then they're able to just use this recycled water on those small gardens. And so you'll go to a place very dry, like the dry parts of Makueni and Kitui, where everything else is dry, but you'll find a small garden, 3 by 3 meters, that is very green. And you wonder how, and it's because part of the agri-nutrition behavior change communication that we've been promoting is use the water, the little water that is there, after you have used it for other things, and just, make a garden for yourself. And they would have vegetables to eat at home. And so earlier on you had Vihiga County talk about the African leafy vegetables. They pride in producing that a lot and even exporting that. We worked with a lot of women groups in Vihiga County to just enable them produce, a lot of African leaf vegetables and market it, but also they invested in solar dryers so that what is not going into the market as fresh is dried up, and then they can sell it later. And we also connected them with supermarket chains and some export markets so that they start exporting that. And so climate change, yes, so we see the use of solar dryers there, to just conserve the food there, because we are blessed with sun. So just conserve this food so it serves us for longer. And as we went around meeting the farmers that were participating in the programs, we would see many of them have actually stocked up some of the vegetables. A lot of this also we did in Makueni and in Kitui, just encouraging farmers to, and that we did together with a program that was funded by USAID but implemented by FAO, and all that, just promoting the production, the consumption, the preservation of those foods, especially so that in drier times they still have foods. Now the other area is, and this is in the area of grain and pulses, focusing so much on the southeastern counties and the ASAL counties. So there is very huge shortage of drought-tolerant crops.
Judy, I would like to know what the role your organization is playing in conservation of this indigenous crops and seed banks.
And so what we've been doing is working with KFIS, working with CALRO, working with the county governments, working with seed merchants, but most importantly, community seed growers to increase production of drought-tolerant crop seed, pulses, a lot more cowpeas, green grams, groundnuts, especially in Taita Taveta, and marketing of those so that there is increased availability of drought-tolerant crop seed, which is early maturing, just with little rain. It's there's already food on the table, and so what we have done currently is production of almost 160 metric tons of drought-tolerant crop seed. It's not enough, but it's a huge leap towards just addressing the insufficiency of that crop seed, which is very important for production of food for the people in the ASALs.
How can we increase cultivation of indigenous crops across the country?
We look at crops, but we also look at animals. Let me talk about small stock, like poultry. I think you and I both know that if you're doing a broiler, then you need much more attention to it in terms of just the care that it requires for it to from chick to maturity. That is not the same as with indigenous chicken. Our indigenous chicken, they are more resistant to diseases compared to the foreign breed, and so a farmer keeping indigenous chicken is actually going to spend less, say, on managing diseases, and currently, if you know, actually do a side hustle in selling mature chicken. Okay, so when you go to the supermarket and buy maybe a 1.5 kg broiler, you spend maybe 800 shillings. 1.5 kg indigenous chicken fetches much more. It should be between 1,200 and maybe even 2,000, depending on where you're buying it. So actually the farmer fetches more, yet they've spent lesser on producing this indigenous chicken. And we have worked with 5 chicken off-takers who supply farmers with chicks and then support them on extension and then buy back across the 12 counties. And their data, all of them, is showing the farmers are fetching more from indigenous chicken as compared to the poultry. Now, going back to, say, African leafy vegetables, for as long as you have the seed, sometimes even you don't even have to buy the seed, honestly. So when it just drops on the ground, for as long as it rains, the seed grows. There's very little except water. Yeah, a few times there'll be, pests, but the production is cheap. It just needs your labor and commitment, compared to if you're doing, many of the I don't want to call them foreign crops, but some other crops where you require a lot of inputs, a lot of chemicals to manage the pests and what have you. So you spend more. Okay. Sometimes you get more in terms of crop yield, but you also spend so much more as opposed to the indigenous ones. There is lesser spending. So much of your labor and just good seed and going back to some of the old practices in terms of just the farm management, mulching and things like that, crop rotation.
We're a net importer of food. I'd like to know how we can reduce our import bill through indigenous foods.
So it is important for the entire nation to take the issue of nutrition very seriously, because it impacts on very many areas of our lives. Our health, if our health is not good, then we're not producing in other sectors, then as a country we are doing poorly. So this conference is just the beginning of dialogue that needs to continue, but maybe not just dialogue, but also implementation at national level, implementation at county level, implementation at household level, practices that are going to, help us feed on our indigenous foods that are full of fiber, without too much contamination, and sell some, make money, buy what we don't produce.
Judy, how can multi-sectoral approach, including consumer engagement and private-led initiatives, promote indigenous foods which are safe and can withstand harsh weather conditions to ensure food security?
So there are three pathways, as I understand. There may be more to nutrition security and nutrition outcomes, and people feeding indigenous is obviously one of them. But even as we promote indigenous, it is important that we're looking at the full diet. We're looking at all the important food groups. So people can go back to feed on indigenous, but they're only feeding on cassava. Okay. When I was growing up, we used to do sometimes cassava for breakfast, for lunch, and for supper. So is it indigenous? Yes. But is it wholesome? Is it enough to give me the nutrition that I need? No. And so the project and the funding from USAID required us to increase nutrition education. So the households that are participating in activities that are enabling them improved productivity and income also understand that, if you get your money, don't go and start buying chips and mandazi, and because usually that's the notion, right? Think about feeding your family holistically on diverse foods that are going to enable you consume better foods. And this we have done with the Ministry of Agriculture national level, and then cascaded those to at least the counties that we focused in, the 12 counties.
I know as an organization you have done a survey on indigenous crops, and I'd like to know how the demand is. You give us a demographic breakdown on where they're coming from and whether these farmers can meet the consumer demand.
Most of these are coming from areas where there is sufficient rain in the Feed the Future language or project language. We call them high rainfall areas. So mostly the larger western I mean Nyanza and Western combined and Kisii and those areas, a lot of that vegetable is coming from there. A lot of it to the local markets, but actually the demand is so much coming from the cities. Nairobi is a big consumer year round, and so everyone from the counties really just make sure their produce is coming to Nairobi, because Nairobi will always consume, and that's the reason. While there are times when there is the vegetables are expensive a little bit, they'll be there. You will get them in the markets because it's a big consumer. Mombasa, of course, is another big consumer. Nakuru. So generally, the big cities are big consumers. I once lived in Kisumu for a year, and yes, there was the people at the lake. They love their fish, so there was not as much vegetables. But there's been a lot. When you go to the Kibuye market now, there's a lot of vegetables available, but also the demand is very high. Now today when you go to the supermarkets, over time the supermarkets have started stocking, indigenous vegetables, because families have started realizing this is the way to go. Then I'll go to chicken. So indigenous chicken, we can never meet the demand as of now. Yeah, it's very high. So the businesses that we have worked with, there's no time. They're really stuck with the chicken. The farmers that sell indigenous chicken, it's very rare, especially like they're in groups. It's very rare that they will be stuck with the indigenous chicken. Okay. I know there are cases where that happens, and it's just the lack of connection with the market. And so that's why the projects like ourselves are coming really to just enable them, the buyers know their farmers.
Judy, I'd like you to further break down the demographic of who is eating what.
That's not a very easy question to answer, but this is what I will say. I know that families in the cities are buying a lot of this indigenous foods, chicken, vegetables, sorghum. People are starting to go back because especially of the lifestyle diseases. But the dynamics at household level. I've been to families where food, there's this package of food and then there's this package of food. So the mother and the father, they will eat the dried fish and kunde, ugali, but then they will cook for the children chips and fried chicken, which is broiler. The children even don't like the kienyeji chicken. So I think there is need for behavior change communication, so that you and I and the people that have the wallet also have the influence in the houses in terms of how the people, everyone in the house is feeding. I mean, the mothers here have a very big role, of course, and so they can really change the behaviors at household level. And there is too much obesity, okay? There are many contributing factors, of course. We are not working a lot, we are not doing a few things, but obviously feeding is a big thing. And the children also even today have obesity. And on the Twitter, the hashtag my food is indigenous that is trending in this conference today. I was talking about if we went to people's fridges today, what do we find? And so it starts with you and I, and it starts with everyone that is watching. Back at home now, they probably eat a lot of mboga and a lot of ugali, but now they don't buy fruits. They don't. Again, it's the whole mix. They don't include the whole mix. Okay. So while we think maybe the people in the rural areas are feeding better, actually the answer is probably not, because they're not looking at the entire spectrum of what is supposed to be all the food groups, both for children and for grown-ups. And I was also asking on this Twitter conversation, what are our children feeding in schools? Because that's another place for influencing good behavior, and the children listen to the teachers a lot. And so again, we can start changing the narrative, because there's too much obesity, there's too much lifestyle diseases in Kenya as it is in the world. And so the small things that we can do, we could actually do them and move the needle a bit in terms of our health if we just adopted better nutrition practices, and of course putting our indigenous foods at the center of it all.
Thank you, Judy Odongo, talking to us about taking the issue of nutrition seriously, even as we grapple with food insecurity in the country. She is the Deputy Chief of Party, USAID, Kenya Crops and Dairy Market System right here in the country. Now we take you back in studio. My name is Wairi Mujenga.